I think LMI has been crucial in where our state is going.
This work resonates with people, and watching LMI grow, it tells me that we're really on to something.
New modes of collaboration demand new ways of thinking about authority and decision-making power. We're really looking and talking about building flatter teams and less hierarchy.
Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I know that everyone was really excited to have one more Zoom meeting added to their day. So we're going to bring you, I think, actually an interesting kind of interactive process today, and an opportunity to dive a little deeper into our tool around collaborative problem solving and collaborative solutions building. I'm Ed Honowitz. I'm the project manager for the California Labor Management Initiative, which is part of the CDE Foundation. So I want to give a shout out to my colleague, Gustavo Morales. We have a couple other CDF staff, Glennon and Karen are in there today joining us. And then we'll be joined shortly by the team from HMA Community Strategies. And so again, the California Labor Management Initiative is a project of the CDE Foundation. We work with the Department of Education, with most of your state associations, the State Board and CCE and other agencies. Since 2015, we've connected with and engaged over 170 school districts and county offices around the state of California. I think what we offer as a unique kind of space is this ability to offer kind of a safe place for challenging and important conversations from union leaders, superintendents, senior staff, principals and building reps, board members, just a variety of folks in leadership positions across school systems. So if we can go to the next slide here. We have a document that's new if we wanted to share with you. This is just kind of an overview and some frequently asked questions. So you can either go to that link, which is both in the chat and or take a picture of the QR code with your camera. But we offer this as just a way of helping you explain to others in your organizations what the work of the Labor Management Initiative is. Next, I wanted to move to something which some of you may have seen. We've talked about this before. This comes to us actually out of a great document that the NEA put together, Collaborating for Student Success. And this is really just kind of the spectrum, the range, this continuum of labor relations that many organizations find themselves in, from very adversarial and on the verge of strike, all the way across to a more traditional kind of we get along but we put up with each other, all the way to where we want to get to, which is this idea of partnership, voice, collaboration, and really the ability to work deeply together in meaningful ways. So if we look at the next piece here, as you know, if you've worked with us before, there's a variety of collaborative structures that we basically have brought to people. This comes from Dr. Patrick Dolan and the Consortium for Educational Change, really a way of thinking about how we build structures for continuous improvement. And you'll see that's really kind of this idea of oftentimes we're in these kind of top-down structures within systems, but we're trying to also create this other channel, more channels for voice for staff to influence and impact decision making up and down the structure. And then we wanted to also share with you a recent case study. It's really kind of a research-based story. This is Dinuba Unified. Their journey, we started working with them in 2015. They've really had a pretty remarkable transformation, moving from sort of real conflict and a pretty toxic labor relations dynamic to a pretty remarkable collaborative situation that they feel has definitely impacted their ability to work and to improve student achievement. So you can find that on our website under district stories, and there's a variety of stories there. And then I wanted to then move on to our next piece here, which is really the bulk of our work today. And so again, this is a document. If you've been with us in one of the previous webinars that we've started to do to roll out this tool, this will look familiar to you. If you haven't had a chance to work with a document before, this is a tool, Stages of Collaborative Problem Solving, which we're really excited to have and to roll out. We're getting some good feedback from people that are using this. It seems to be helpful for them. It's something that we've been working with our state associations to give us feedback from CTA and CSEA and AXA and others. And we're excited to have this thing. So again, the QR code is there, the link is in the chat, that bit.ly is there. We encourage you to bring this thing up because you'll be referred to it at various times. So without any further ado, I want to welcome our partners from HMA Community Strategies, and I'll turn it over to them, and we'll see you on the other side, and look forward to being with you. Thanks again for taking the time to join us this afternoon in what is a incredibly difficult time for educators in the state and across the nation. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Sid.
Thank you, Ed, and welcome again, everybody. I'd first like to introduce today's facilitators, and the three of us are experienced and passionate education advocates. My name is Sid Haro, and I've worked in public education for over 3 decades as a teacher, school administrator, and lastly, as an assistant superintendent. Michael Butler is an extraordinary coach, evaluator, and educational consultant. Ellen Pace is a former education nonprofit education and is actively engaged in educational support and reform throughout California. And all three of us believe that schools should be great places for students to learn and equally great places for staff to work. So let's take a look at our objectives for today. Today's objectives are: participants will deepen their understanding of the LMI system for collaborative problem solving. Participants will explore implementation of stages 3 and 4 of collaborative problem solving. And participants will practice using tools and guiding questions to lead and participate in an effective collaborative problem solving through stages 3 and 4. Michael?
Hello, everyone. This is our graphic that illustrates our model for collaborative problem solving or collaborative solution building. And so we're going to unpack this a little bit today. So our first stage, which we're going to do a quick review of today, is stage 1, about identifying the issue you're trying to solve. And then we also paired that up in our last webinar on defining authority and agency, or addressing power dynamics in these kinds of situations. So we're going to do a quick review of these 2 stages, but our third stage and our fourth stage is where we're going to focus our attention today. And so that's about launching ideas and testing assumptions, sometimes called implementation. And then after that, how do we focus and reflect on our effectiveness? So these are the 4 stages of our model, but they're circled by or embedded throughout with 2 systemic issues. One is about demonstrating accountability and transparency through how we communicate upward and downward. And the other one is, how do we make this sustainable? How do we build an enduring system so that there aren't just pockets of excellence and it isn't just episodic change or positive reform? So we're gonna focus back today and take you through in-depth on stages 3 and 4 and a cursory review of stages 1 and 2.
So, hi everyone, I'm Ellen, obviously, and I want to take a minute to just share with you, why did we create another tool that talks a lot about the PDSA cycle or how to move work? Because we created this cycle because we know education systems are really, really big behemoths of hierarchy and tradition. And we wanted to empower people to be creative, to be courageous, but also to focus and be intentional about making change. Making change in schools is prevented often because we don't feel we have the space or the opportunity to do something. And we wanted to give you a tool that helps you build those assets and those aspects that prevent us from moving work in a different way. We also created this guide because we wanted to focus on being proactive, not reactive. We wanted to also be more thoughtful about who we include in the process of planning and decision making. We also wanted to lift up that this whole process is really about building on what you already know and what you are doing, but doing it better, doing it with more creativity, with more intention, with more equity. And we really want to help lift up the value of partnering across your organization. We would love to be able to help you see the value and build the relationships with your union partners, your administration partners, and everyone within your school community to drive change. And of course, we want equity to be at the center. One of the other beauties of this tool is you can jump in at any point. We know that often you don't have the luxury to start planning at stage one and start from the very beginning. Often you're given a directive, told to implement something and make it happen. This guide is you can step in at any point, and what we say is choose your adventure.
So the guide, it has 4 main components. So for each of the pieces of it, we present some big ideas or key concepts to describe what's important about this. And then the bulk of the guide is guiding questions to encourage you to think about questions as a way to guide your teams and to have that deeper discussions and explore the issues that Ellen just referred to in a team setting, as well as guiding questions if you're an individual leader or just a participant in a larger team and a catalyst for reform. The other piece that we will talk about a little bit later is we've included linkages to both student academic standards and to adult standards for professional educators to illustrate that this is not new work, this is existing work that we've already been asked to do, and hopefully the guide will provide a how-to and some clear direction on how to implement that. So let's talk about stage 1 very quickly. This is about identifying the issue that you're trying to solve or resolve, and it's deceptively simple, right? It may seem really straightforward, but as we begin to work in a collaborative setting, we have to think about what is our priority and why. And so the big ideas behind this is really deciding whether the issue is systemic, in other words, a root cause or a symptom. You don't have to only focus at the root cause level, but you need to be very mindful about which level you're working at. And you'll hear these words throughout our presentation today about being strategic, which means making priorities, emphasizing some things above others, being intentional, being very mindful, and being coherent all the way through about what we do. Now, on the diversity issue, we want to make sure that we are reflective of our communities, So the equity component of this is lifting up the diversity of perspective, of background, of experiences, and making sure that's present when the priorities are being set. And then clarifying that those priorities are in fact relevant and impactful to the people that we want to have the impact on. And this is where data is very helpful to help us make those choices and not just rely on our own intuition or the status quo. And then lastly, a big idea that's associated with this is to acknowledge the resources, both human and fiscal, that are behind the priorities. So let's talk about a scenario.
So we want to now introduce a scenario that we'll be using throughout our webinar today. We're going to go quickly through stages 1 and 2, but we're going to spend the majority of our time focused on stages 3 and 4. And we wanted to get you closer to the practice of using this tool across the stages of collaborative problem solving. So here's a scenario. You're a leader at a middle school, and it's the start of the school year and time to reach out to parents and family members. Each year, your school follows a similar automated phone calls, weekly reminders to all households, a notification on the marquee and school website, and a flyer for the students to bring home. Regardless, parent involvement is stubbornly low, and staff attitudes towards parent outreach can be characterized as, no matter what we do, it doesn't make much of a difference. You feel that family engagement is a priority, but others aren't so sure. Now, as we start, here's some guiding questions to think about that might be, how will you start? And what can you do to begin to set priorities for this new direction? So let's now take a look at stage two. Stage two is about two big ideas that are often overlooked during the planning process, yet the impacts on trust and precision often prevent us from being effective. I'm talking about authority and agency. Ellen?
Thanks, Sid. Stage two for me is really, really interesting. And it's about the elephant in the room. It's about the clarity of decision-making and recognizing the realities of power dynamics that exist in every situation. Stage two is about affirmatively acting to address both of these issues. So new modes of collaboration demand new ways of thinking about authority and decision-making power. We're really looking and talking about building flatter teams and less hierarchy. So we know that this is a really hard pill for some folks to accept, because being a decision maker is often like having the corner office. But the benefits of collaboration accrue to those who pull others into the process, who allow innovation with new ideas, and who become comfortable with sharing power across the group, and especially sharing power and decision-making with those who are closest where the work is being accomplished. But this doesn't happen accidentally. It requires intentionality, and leaders who take steps to re-engineer group dynamics and reach out to those who are tucked in the corner and not really speaking up, or who don't feel they have the right to speak up. That's what this stage two is about. It's about crafting norms for your meetings and your teams that empower everyone to be participants. It's also about creating clarity about when you're asking someone to give you an opinion, or when you're truly delegating decision-making to another group. Stage two also really has us thinking about something that I'm sure you're already familiar with, that LMI talks a lot about, which is Andy Hargrave's quadrants of trust and precision. Stage two helps us think about how can we be more focused and clear about what we're doing by building trust amongst our team through clarity. So we want to go back to this scenario and again start giving you some ideas about how to build questions into the work that you're doing to move deeper and more collaboratively. So here we are at stage two. And remember, you're a leader at a middle school trying to advance family engagement. You want to pilot a new approach and are hoping to motivate others to assist. But you sense that a new direction or strategy calls into question those past practices and those who've been leading those past practices and efforts, and all of the feelings and the emotions and the things that triggers when you try to make change. So how will you proceed acknowledging the potential defensiveness and turf issues that exist when you try to make change? How might you address the power dynamics of this situation? And how will you pull new voices and perspectives into crafting solutions with everyone?
So having reviewed, stages 1 and 2 about prioritization and power dynamics, we're at stage 3, which is a big focus for us today. So we call this launching ideas and testing assumptions rather than implementation, because we are trying to encourage new thinking on this topic. Because, why do we always think that doing more of the same is going to lead to different outcomes? So here's our chance to do something, in fact, different and celebrate it and do it with promise. So we're going to challenge you to think about implementation in a new way. So here's our scenario as it continues, right? And we're going to put it into practice. Your colleagues agreed to pilot some new approaches to family engagement. Staff are ready to try some new strategies for parent outreach, parent training, volunteerism, involvement in school governance, and everybody wants to move from planning to doing. But you have a lingering sense as a leader that the outcome might need a little bit more definition. You're also hyper aware that you're going to be tackling family engagement on multiple fronts. Lots of moving parts happening at the same time. So how will you help coordinate all these multiple and parallel efforts? What can you do to ensure that you achieve the goals and outcomes that you've set forth? What have we learned about parent and family engagement from our experience during COVID that might inform our efforts? And similarly, how did the racial justice awakenings that we saw so obviously and so poignantly in the summer impact our understandings about how to do this equitably? So in this stage of launching ideas and testing our assumptions, there are some big ideas. One is that we build on what already exists. Rarely do we ever have the luxury of starting from scratch. In many cases, there are existing plans that already outline what some of the priorities are. Those could be your district's LCAP. If you're a secondary school, that could be your accreditation plan, or it could be your single school plan for improvement. So we have to kind of take those into consideration. The next one is that, we acknowledge that there's more than one way to do this work. In fact, we might want to encourage multiple ways to do the work because local context matters. We know that one size fits all very, very rarely leaves anyone feeling satisfactory. So if there's one thing we have learned in COVID, it's that local context matters and we have to be adaptive and flexible. And this puts us to the next point, which is about trusting others to do the work, right? This is about distributed leadership, and this is about trust. Trust to delegate and to give those closest to the action some autonomy to make those decisions and be those flexible and adaptive people that they have shown us that they can be in the last year. And lastly, related to this is focusing on fidelity, but fidelity to outcomes, and not necessarily fidelity to process. We can specify the end, but not the means. And, we don't want to micromanage. And all this is a way to think about growth mindset in a different way. We're focusing on learning rather than compliance, and we're encouraging experimentation and curiosity and building in flexibility. Ellen?
Okay, all right, the fun chart. So we've talked a little bit about being inclusive and recognizing the power dynamics of who's at the table. But one of the other things to really think about is if you want to move the work, who's on your team? This chart has us thinking about what kind of decision makers are at the table with you. It highlights the kind of common personalities of different decision makers and divides them into a way for you to think about who's on your team. So first you have that quick action decider. All right, confess, it's me. Somebody who says, oh my God, that's a brilliant idea, let's go for it. And then you have someone who is the slow analytic decider, who really thinks about, do we have all the details we need to actually implement the work that we want to do? Have we thought through this question and collected all the data we need to do a really good job to get to the result we're trying to get to? Then you have the procrastinating decider, that person who's really afraid to actually make the decision, but is very cautious and careful and make sure that all of the pieces are in place so that the work can happen if only they could make that choice. And last, we have the inclusive process decider, the person who wants to make sure that everyone is included, to make sure that the process is equitable, that all of the voices who are at the table are heard, and those who aren't at the table are reached out to make sure that the decision that you make reflects the best thinking and the broadest equity strategy. So I've already shared who I am. We'd like to give you a minute to think about who's on your team. What kind of a decision maker are you? And why is this important? First off, it's really important because you want to make sure you have a team that has balance, right? You want to make sure that you have all of these different elements on your team. So when you do make a decision and you do make a plan, the best possible work product has been created. So at this point, we'd like to give you the opportunity to meet with a group of colleagues and share some thoughts about where you are, where your team is, and how you can build better balance across your union or across your team or your administrative team so you can make great decisions.
As we mentioned, our guide has many guiding questions at both the team and the individual leader level. And what we're trying to do is get you in the habit of thinking about how to ask the right questions. And we've come up with some in our guide, but you may have others to add. When it comes to this launching ideas and testing our assumptions, there are some guiding questions that are very specific to the design of a project or an initiative that we're trying to accomplish. So first off, we want to make sure that we have a lot of clarity. Sometimes we call this precision. So we want to make sure that there are that people know exactly what they're supposed to collaborate around, and super important, how to define success. Because if I don't know how to define success, I don't know exactly what the end game is, and I don't really know where I'm going. Second, we want to make sure we build in some agility and adaptivity. We're trying to get away from one size fits all, and we're trying to encourage people to adapt and make kinds of flexible decisions on the ground that make sense. We want to empower people to do that. So we might want to think about how can we try out a series of different ideas that are related, and then we can get more information on what works. And lastly, we want to encourage that curiosity and learning piece. So we want to make sure that people understand that they have the permission to experiment and to test out ideas. And as long as they bring back some data and some reflection, that will help us improve the work. Now, in addition to kind of the precision component, we also want to build our trust within teams. And so we're using the implementation stage to model new ways of working together. So this is where we're delegating and distributing leadership, but making sure people are clear about what they're being asked to do and what role they're being asked to play. This is also where we're pushing on coherence, right? I need to understand what the priority is, and I need to know how it fits into something bigger. Every single collaborative project is an opportunity to learn from and about other people on my team. Occasionally, plans are really successful the first time around, but most of the time they require refinement, So we're tweaking as we go. So this is a great way to model the growth mindset that we have an opportunity to learn, not an opportunity to fail. And then if we've done our work well, collaboration is going to build and foster trust. It provides opportunities for people to earn trust and goodwill and strengthens team bonds.
So let's do a little bit of practice here. And as we've shared out our initial scenario, I would suspect that a number of you have had some questions surface around it. That was deliberate on our part. It's really a simple frame for the scenario with the intent to highlight the value and use of our developing guiding questions in the process to really tease out the data that would be useful. So let's practice a little bit. And we're going to take a couple of moments to capture your thinking here in your journal or something to write on. Think about the family engagement scenario. How might guiding questions help you move this work forward effectively, to design the project, to improve your teamwork? And what questions would you add to the conversation? And consider a recent planning conversation. Which guiding questions helped drive your work in that? And what guiding questions do you think were missing that could have benefited the project design and teamwork. Take a couple of moments and capture your thinking now. Go ahead and do a little bit of writing. So we're going to take a few minutes now to share your thinking, and we're going to be going into some breakout rooms. And what I'd like for your group to discuss would be, what guiding questions from the guide would you use to facilitate the group planning conversation at the middle school? And the guide is in the chat. Do you identify any new questions? So in your breakout room, go ahead and share your personal planning situation and any guiding questions you're considering. As you have a chance to listen to your colleagues, please share your feedback with them. We'll have 6 minutes or so for your discussion, and be prepared to share out a bit when we return. Great. So welcome back, everybody. I'm really interested to hear some of the things that might have been surfaced in your breakout rooms. I know there were some pretty rich discussions. And before I do, I've got to share you that a colleague of mine, Gustavo, who's part of our LMI team, offers participation points for these kind of share outs. So I'm going to ask if anybody can share something you discussed in your room. Did you identify any new questions, or did anybody discuss school reopenings, which is really an important topic right now? So feel free and just join in. Remember, participation points are being offered here.
Okay, but what do the points get us? That's part of the whole game. So if I'm playing a game, what's at the end there? If we're going to get a lot of points and I'm doing extra work, I want to know what the end goal is.
Our points are redeemable at any imaginary store in your mind of your choosing. They have no expiration date, and they are highly valuable because you get to place the value on them.
Thank you, Jesse. So if anybody could be brave and share something out really quickly.
It looks like we have a couple hands up.
Great. Let's see. I don't see him. Can you? Oh, yeah. Rosalind, please share out.
Okay, really, you ask honest questions. My concern is, where are we now? Honestly, where are we now in terms of our interaction with parents, and what did COVID teach us? So, and then we also had an administrator in our group who put another perspective on it in terms of, how do we look at these different perspectives and start talking to, what are the goals? Are the goals different? Are we working towards the same goal? But I'm very interested in what we learned from COVID.
Boy, I love it. Thank you. You know, sometimes we just get caught up so much in the work and the timelines. We just, plow right ahead without really the benefit of asking those kind of questions at some key moments. Thank you very much, Rosalind. I've marked your participation points. Ellen?
Or real quick, we were going to listen for Paula had her hand raised as well, really quickly.
Oh, yes, Paula.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we started off with listening, right, as being the important thing, but also, what is our main goal for this engagement? Where are we trying to get? Is there some specific outcomes that we're trying to reach? And how can we listen to the parents better, and what would interest them to become engaged? Then the other part of our whole, and we did touch on COVID a little bit, but that wasn't really the focus. We were looking at, how do we persuade our partners to buy into this engagement as well and support it? So if we're a paraprofessional and we're working on something specific for parent engagement and student activities or whatever, how do we get the teachers to help and feel like, able to support and willing to support what we're doing, and kind of help with that communication tie with the parents and the students?
Thank you. One of the things I heard you surface was listening, and really gets me thinking that these guiding questions in many ways are holistic. I mean, they cross through the different stages, and we're going to be speaking about trust in just a bit. And sometimes a simple ask of listening really helps you continue to build trust with others. Ellen?
Great. Well, those two share outs, Paula and Rosalind, are great segues to this next topic, which is the fourth stage of the process, which is where you have the opportunity to kind of sit back with your colleagues, focus on what you've done, and reflect on whether or not you've actually moved the needle towards the outcome you were trying to achieve. Stage 4. So let's visit our scenario. It's nearing the end of the school year, and you and your colleagues have accomplished much in the way of engaging families in the life of your school. A meeting is being organized to assess what has been learned and how to deepen efforts in the coming year. You know that this meeting is critical to shaping staff attitudes and solidifying the need for ongoing family engagement. You also want to make sure that the work of collaboration is acknowledged and continued. So, some thoughts. How can you ensure that this is a learning moment for your school where data truly informs the next steps? Also, how might you do your part in this reflection to consider the spirit of collaboration that's emerging, not just the data? How do you celebrate the teamwork and the outcomes? Michael?
This is where we're encouraging you and we're strongly urging you to think about data and reflection in a new way. I used to do a lot of data presentations in school settings and in district settings, and I used to call it the fireworks show because people would watch the charts as they went up and down, ooh and ah, and then they just go home and no action was taken. So, you know, people were passively absorbing the data and not always really thinking about it or getting curious. So what we're encouraging you to do is think more from an inquiry basis and less on judgment. So good data allows us to ask better questions. So the data is a source to kind of explore with a curiosity mindset. A second thing is to think about how to reflect on data rather than react to data. So we want you to get used to the idea that you're just taking the temperature at regular intervals and it's just a normal way or habit that you operate rather than a kind of stressful exam. I mean, one way to think about this is the best teacher you ever had was assessing you without you even knowing it. We're also asking you to think about effectiveness rather than just efficiency, right? So efficiency is, are we doing it right? And effectiveness is, are we doing the right thing, right? Are we really getting at the outcomes? And some of you were saying this in some of your feedback. So going beyond just training people, right, to what's supposed to be the result of that training. So going beyond the immediate. And lastly, thinking about things from a continuous improvement standpoint rather than a continuous compliance standpoint. How is data really helping us clarify why we are collaborating and what we're collaborating about? And what results is it bringing? Is the data actually a kind of compass or a lamp that's lighting the way forward? Or is it just a dead end that's taking up a lot of time? So that we can hone our precision and build trust at the same time. As an individual leader, you could be asking yourself these types of questions. You know, have I modeled curiosity and inquiry? Am I encouraging others to be curious and creating the psychological safety for that to occur? Have I opened up opportunities for people to think bigger and broader about outcomes and impact instead of just the immediate output? Can I facilitate discussions that help us really document and anchor what we've learned in the process, positive or negative? And can I advance the inquiry so that we have a clear action step and know which way we are proceeding? So these are new and different ways that we hope that you may think differently about data and data reflection and how you act upon data going forward.
Thanks, Michael. So stepping up as an individual, you know, as I remember when I was a principal and how when I attended our monthly administrative meetings, I'd see my colleagues and they'd ask me, how's it going? And I'd say, good. Then I'd ask them the same and they'd say, it's good. And it always seemed a bit risky by being too forthright or to come off like you weren't totally in control of your circumstances. And sometimes it's a bit intimidating to be able to raise the right concerns and ask different questions. And just being a member of a professional collaborative problem-solving team. So let's think a bit for a moment here what will support you or what can support you when you step up as an individual and a leader. Some considerations are finding my voice. You know, as a leader, every time you have an opportunity for input, that is an opportunity to shift the culture and work of that group. Earlier, we talked about courage. Here's your entry point. As I reflect on having worked with lots of groups, it helps me to remember that I'm advocating for students here. And I know it takes courage to authentically share your point of view, so it can be helpful to find an ally or a mentor who has your back. Also, ironically, finding your voice can also be about knowing when to be quiet. Focus on data, not people. When you focus on data, you're largely able to remove emotions from the equation. And also, data isn't just numerical. It can correspond to equity, community, morale, etc. And what frame of unionism, industrial, professional, social justice, is guiding my activism? A brief description of the three are: industrial unionism is the traditional type of unionism. It's the collective power to meet bread and butter issues and to ensure fairness from management. Professional unionism is the control of the profession to ensure quality. And social justice unionism is about equity for our students through active engagement in the community and through policies that impact educational and social economic opportunities.
So let's go back to this family engagement scenario. So Ellen and I are going to do a mock dialogue to kind of illustrate how this might go. But first, we're starting with this premise. So here are some of the new things that were done at the middle school. So they decided that they would implement student-led conferences on a quarterly basis. So those are ones where students walk their parents or their family members through their learning. And then the teacher is there at the end to answer any clarifying questions. They also implemented some monthly check-in phone calls to families. So trying to call families and not just with bad news, but with just a kind of start a two-way street of communication. And lastly, they identified some parent ambassadors to help them lead workshops and do some of the communication and outreach in hopes that it would garner more parent involvement. So after 6 months of doing that, what they find as they're coming towards the end of that school year in this scenario is parent participation in the student-led conferences is up 30%. So there's a lot more parents showing up at the school and wanting to, and hearing from their own children what they're learning and what their progress is like. They also have done a good job of now reaching out to parents with those monthly check-in phone calls, and they've figured out that a lot of the information was inaccurate. So they've increased the accuracy, but lots of people still aren't picking up the phone. And then they've offered a series of workshops, and the workshops on social emotional learning around growth mindset and, you know, and self-efficacy there are really up, but the other workshops have remained about the same.
Michael, thank you for all that data. That's really, really interesting. And I know we're doing a lot of things, but quite frankly, I look at that data and I go, oh my God, we're not achieving anything. We have very poor results.
Well, let's pause here and think about, like, after only 6 months, we have some progress, right? Some of our efforts seem to be really paying off. And I'm curious why some are really taking off and why some others seem to need a lot more time.
Can you explain to me the positives you see in this data?
So the fact that parents are showing up for the student-led conferences is a win. You know, in a relatively short amount of time, we've seen a big bump up in that. It also looks like some of the workshops are really resonating with parents in our community, and more people are showing up for those than ever before.
But Michael, you didn't give me any data about improved student achievement. Where's that?
Maybe we need to take a step back and really rethink what family engagement is and why we're actually pursuing it. You know, traditionally we think about parent engagement of like who's showing up at the events and activities that we host. But the fact is that many more parents in this case are hearing from their own children about progress, and they're understanding for themselves what their children are learning and what they're capable of and where they're still struggling. They're also learning a little bit more about social emotional learning, which provides us as a school with opportunities on how to help parents support and reinforce learning in the home setting, which in some ways is the most authentic kind of family engagement there is. And isn't that our real goal? Besides, we're learning a lot more about what families think is most relevant to them right now, and we should capture that, and that should inform what we do going forward.
But Michael, they're not taking our calls. How do we know they want to partner with us?
Again, we have to remember it's only been 6 months. We're trying new approaches and we're trying to build trust with parents who have a history of phone calls always being kind of negative or just robotic. They haven't been used to hearing good news or people that just want to open up dialogue. So maybe we need to re-message the purpose behind why we're trying to do those monthly check-in phone calls in the first place.
You also have me thinking about, maybe we should find out who has success in making calls and what makes them so successful. Well, all right. So what's our next step in taking this to the school leadership team? And how do we make sure that we actually do something with all of this information?
Right. We do have to get to the action, but before we act, we might want to ask ourselves some more questions. We might want to ask, for example, which parents are not coming to the student-led conferencing and why? And which parents are not coming to workshops at all? Maybe we need to find out more about that.
So I guess really, maybe we need to think about where we can act and where we really need to drill down to get more information. So how do we drill down and figure out a course of action? What do our next steps look like, Michael?
So we need to pull people together and get them to try and encourage more questioning around the data. But our curiosity needs to be linked to some action. If we do this right, we can really build on our success while also highlighting where we can do better and bring everyone on the team along. So this isn't just a one-off.
All right, Sid, let's turn it over.
Yeah, thank you for the great role play, Ellen and Michael. And we're going to now focus on precision here to ensure that our reflections on effectiveness are worthwhile and action-oriented. So thinking about what we just saw and heard, let's focus on how we can develop a greater level of precision by using some guiding questions. Now, based upon our scenario and role play, I'd like for you to think about what questions are the data raising for you? What is the opportunity in the existing data? How will or might you use the data to refine plans for family engagement? What additional data do you want or need? So I'm tracking this. At this point, Gustavo's going to be giving out more of the participation points for contributing. Can I have somebody raise their hand and share some of their thinking, let's say, about what questions are the data raising for you? And I'll be looking for raised hands.
Let's see, I got Lilia, Rosalind, and Paula.
Oh, there we go. Okay, Rosalind, let's start off with you.
Yeah, when you were speaking, I think we need to redefine progress or redefine the data we're collecting. Success doesn't always present itself in academics. Some of the things that I would say should redefine progress is we've identified a student who doesn't have lunch. We've identified that kid who needs more access to broadband. We've identified areas where our students need, rather than focusing on their achievement in academics, we need to focus on what do they need to achieve? What are they missing? And that was a great lesson for me once I started teaching remotely.
Thank you. Paula.
Thank you. I think whenever I see data, I always ask, okay, so what is it based on? Who, how many people were given it, are involved in it? Who are the subjects of the data? And is it represented? Is it really feedback of the full group or just a portion of the group? Or so I always want to base my assumptions in that way too. I agree that there has to be more positives I think people always buy into, you know, it's easy, especially now. I know as a board member, I always hear what's wrong. That's what we're bombarded with, everything that's wrong. And I always have to step back and think, you know, just look at the COVID situation. We pivoted to digital learning in like a week's time. That teachers really have been doing tremendous. Our staff, our administrators, the cabinet, the superintendent have been really doing, you know, really great work. So seeing all of that through this lens is part of what I feel is important. But I always ask for more differentiated data, so I understand more about the individuals behind it.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. You know, what you surfaced is a great segue to the next slide, which is, besides building precision, how about building trust? So as you take a look at, as you take a look at building trust, I really encourage you to think about the ways that guiding questions can support you in each of the areas of collaborative problem solving. Now, let's frame this process as a way to go ahead and build and enhance trust. Some guiding questions may be, how can we review existing data in ways that deepen collaboration and teamwork? How will you harness collaboration to refine plans for family engagement using the data? Which opportunities exist for building team trust to ask questions about next steps with data? So the shift from what you surfaced, Paul, in terms of sometimes using data for identifying maybe things that need to be just fixed or breakdowns, or sometimes even assigning blame, that real positive shift to curiosity about the data can really enhance trust and building trust.
I think asking follow-up questions is always important and part of that, because then people get to answer and share their stories, you know, behind it. And that's when you really touch individuals and hear and are given the opportunity to listen in a way that would inform your future decision making.
Yeah, I think Lilia also had a question, and
I did. I wanted to add that I wonder if there were any differences. Getting back to what Paula was saying about who are the people that are participating. Would be curious to see if there was a difference in the actual parents who participated through traditional parent conferences versus student-led conferences. And I would like to interview some of the families that are the ones that usually tend to come and the ones that may be new, and see what was the difference between them. And if I'm sure they were more meaningful. Student-led conferences are always more meaningful, but quoting, doing surveys, doing an interview, sharing an interview, about that, putting it on our website so that families hear other parents talking about this. Sometimes is just more meaningful than looking at raw data.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Maybe a hand from Danny.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm not picking those up. Yes, go ahead.
Hi. So I was more looking at the team building aspect of the team up than the task like parent engagement. And I think around the idea of parent engagement, the data was there of incremental improvement or whatever. I think one of the issues with the last slide that I didn't mention is, what was their goal in the first place? Are they getting anywhere fast, or is it crazy slow and maybe they need to reevaluate? But one of the things we talked about in our breakout room is the why and the where of parent involvement. Like, why do you want them involved more? Because it's kind of this thing we say, but is that actually, where's the value? And in what areas, like the where, parent involvement will matter and make a difference. I think a really thoughtful conversation now about, okay, here are the areas parents showed up differently. Did it make a difference in the culture of our school and the experience of our students? Whatever our priorities were, maybe we're hitting the mark and heading in the right direction. And maybe we realize that our priorities and this idea of parent engagement, we're not getting what we thought we'd get out of it. Or we are.
Thank you.
So I'd like
think-
to lift up two really great things
Yeah.
that I'm hearing in this conversation. One of them is so many of you have talked about how important it is to understand the final goal, which is what Michael has been talking a lot about today, needing to have a shared understanding of what success looks like. What are we working towards? And a lot of you have talked about that in different ways. The other thing that people have lifted up is how wonderful it is in a group to have people curious about different things and for everyone to be curious about what those questions that have been lifted up add to the conversation and how all of that helps us figure out what our next steps might be to get to the shared outcome we are working towards. And how might we have those conversations, Lilia, in a way that takes away the personal nature of the discussion and helps us feel like we're all working together, and it's empowering for all of us to feel some success and an investment in what we're trying to do.
I think we have one more, Taekwon, and then we'll move on.
Ellen kind of stole a little bit of my thunder, but
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I take it back.
No, this isn't about me. But I was looking at the question below, and it's you know, at the LMI, there's a lot of emphasis on trust, and there's a lot of trust involved in what I do as far as negotiating with unions. And so the last question brought some interest to me. What opportunities exist for building team trust as you ask questions about the next steps with data? And one of the things that came to mind is, you know, when you ask questions about moving forward or towards a conclusion or desired, mutually desired outcome, people will believe that you're interested in moving forward with them to reach a desired income when you ask questions about the next steps. And if you're asking questions about the data, it shows that person that the data, the gathering of the data was important, and that their opinion was heard and is being implemented in that process to reach a desired outcome. And so they may trust you to answer forthcoming data gatherings in the future, because I know that when you ask for information, like with surveys, or you ask questions and they give you that data, a lot of people often don't see the results of that data collection. And so when that opportunity comes again, they don't participate because they don't understand that anything happened with that data. So if you ask questions about that data, they'll know that their information was received, it was discussed, and it's part of the plan for moving forward.
Thank you. Let's take a look at now the standards connection. And I believe, Michael?
At the outset, we let you know that in the guide, we have standards linked. So, you know, the standards there in the guide are both student standards, you know, some of the anchor standards in particular, or the practice standards. And we also have the adult professional standards, or capsules, that showcase, you know, what we're asking here of students and of ourselves is not new. You know, the standards already have captured that. So we're really asking, how do we model the change that we want to see in others? And here are just some of the capsules that are here. So you can, if you just took a brief skimming, right, you can see that there's a lot of examples already in our adult standards that talk about, what do educational leaders do? They're doing these things. They're building shared accountability. They're setting clear working agreements. They're treating people with fairness and respect. They're creating opportunities for learning. They're promoting inquiry and problem solving. And then at the student level, we're also asking students to do this critical thinking themselves. We're asking them to ask questions. We're asking them to carry out an investigation. We're asking them to interpret data, to engage in argument from evidence, to persevere in problem solving. So in each case, we have a lot of stuff that empowers us to do what we've already been asked to do. Ellen?
So now we'd like to talk about kind of the big picture and how do we embed all of these collaborative problem solving, collaborative solutions building into our organization. And there are really two different parts of the system that we think can have a great impact. One is around communication and the other is around sustainability. So we're going to spend our time today, though, talking about communication, how we demonstrate accountability and transparency through communication. Because we all know really the impact that communication has on how we view the stories, the data, the information that people are trying to tell us. Words matter. So by spending a little time truly thinking about what we're communicating and to whom we're communicating, we can make a big difference in the trust that we're trying to build and in the precision of what you're trying to achieve. But we're not really just talking about communication as a directive from the district office. What we're talking about is how does information flow from one source to another? Let's go back and take a look at the different scenarios. And I'd like to pose a question or two for each of the different stages that might help us think about how communication could impact that particular stage. So in stage one, a question you might ask is, would we have had a different engagement problem to solve if we had been better communicators in the beginning? In stage two, where we're talking about the clarity of authority and power dynamics, what role do power dynamics play in communication? Do we really have a level playing field between families and the school? And if not, how does that impact communication in all directions? In stage three, where we're talking about planning and figuring out what work we want to do, and this question's come up often, right? Do we have a shared understanding amongst ourselves, but also with our families about what successful engagement looks like, and have we communicated that? And in stage four, whose feedback are we getting when we can consider the successfulness of our efforts? So these are just a few ways to think about communication. But let's talk about those big ideas. What are the big ideas about communication? So first, we really want to think about communication as being multidimensional. It goes in many different directions, it flows in many different ways, and it has many, many different purposes. Communication is essential to trust and precision. It's also an essential element to collaboration and power sharing. Sometimes we use communication as a way to secure power, when actually sharing information could be very soothing to people. Sometimes holding back communication creates an even bigger buzz and even bigger community issue than if we had just shared the information up front. That information of the holdback is much more interesting than the information that you were reluctant to share. Effective communication requires intention and frequent activities. And we'd like to throw out a big idea for you. What would happen to trust and precision if we really shifted the paradigm about communication? Instead of thinking about controlling what we share out, what if we shared everything and thought more carefully about what limited information we need to hold back is confidential?
So you've been hearing these words, trust and precision, throughout our whole presentation. And so we're reminding you of this quadrants of collaboration from Andy Hargraves. And what we're all trying to work towards is maximizing both precision and trust. As leaders, we have a lot of control over precision. We can organize and coordinate and orchestrate meetings and other kinds of gatherings so that we are really clear about what we're collaborating on and why. But the trust piece requires lots of opportunities for it to be built and earned among people. So the other job of leadership is to kind of build those opportunities and craft those opportunities in such a way that they lead towards collaborative professionalism. Far too often, we're stuck in the informal collaboration, which is people get along with people they've worked with for a long time, but aren't always sure of what they're doing. And sometimes we're in that collegiality mode where we've been asked to collaborate, but we're not really clear on what we're doing, or we're clear on what we're being told to do, but we don't really have a lot of trust and therefore don't implement it really in the spirit. So we're urging that we move slowly but surely in an intentional way towards maximizing both precision and trust and creating the safe environments for it to occur. So we hope that you found something from today that you can apply to your own leadership development and that you can bring back to your workplace. And we're really curious, once you begin doing some of this work or take this work to the next level, of how this framework and some of the guiding questions that we've given to you and the tool are being used back at your workplace and in your own teams. So if you do have a chance, please do give us some feedback. Sid?
Just want to say thank you again on behalf of our team, Ellen, Michael, and myself, and Gustavo. And by the way, Tyquin, Rosalind, Paula, Lily, and Danny, thank you all. You all received participation points. And you'll notice the feedback survey we've just put up. If you can respond to that, your feedback is very important to us, and we continue to use it to refine and build upon the work to better serve you and our students.
Thanks, Sid. And so, yeah, please fill out the survey, and we definitely use this. It helps us. The conversation here makes me think, I guess we should be sharing it with all of you as well, so that we get you that feedback loop and you know it was real stuff there. Great insights, great conversation. I love the analogy of the 4 types of deciders with the 4 characters in Sex and the City. That was the most interesting piece of one of the breakouts I was in. You know, I wanted to, if we can move the slide deck up there, go to the next piece there. You know, there's a couple of opportunities for some additional engagement, and basically, you know, we have a few things both for teams and for individuals. So let me talk a little bit about for teams. As you know, we are really encourage labor management teams to come together and attend our events. We have April 22nd, a virtual convening for teams across the state. And so we encourage you to come and be a part of that. And then likewise, we have a additional convening, let's see, on our Summer Institute, which is coming up. And the Summer Institute is on 2 dates, June 22nd, 23rd. We're going to do a pre-conference the previous week for brand new teams that have never engaged before. And then we have an opportunity for a deeper dive into the last pieces of this problem solving work with a real focus around the idea of continuing to really delve into how do you institutionalize this? How do you build enduring systems? And we'll revisit a couple of these other components. So again, we really appreciate just the opportunity to be with you, to learn with you, to get feedback. We'd love to know where you're using this, ideas you have for improving, adding guiding questions, tweaking things. This is a living document that we're trying to get feedback on. And we hope to see you at some of our future convenings. And again, on behalf of Gustavo and I, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today on what is an incredibly busy time in everybody's career, probably the most challenging point anybody's ever seen. But we hope that the tools are useful and they help you in your context going forward. We're happy to stay on for a few minutes if there's additional questions. But again, thank you on behalf of the CDE Foundation and California Labor Management Initiative.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck out there, and really appreciate all your time.